Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So budgeting is a crucial skill, but an even harder skill than budgeting is actually sticking to a budget. That's why so many people end up at the end of the month thinking to themselves, where the hell has all my money gone? So this is something that I want to help you guys with. So I'm going to go through 6 tips that you can use to make sure you keep on top of your spending and make sure you stay within your budget. I just want to quickly go through some of the reasons why you might want to budget, because it's not just the financial benefit that you gain. Now, of course, budgeting is really useful. It means that financially you can figure out where all your money is going, and on top of that you can start saving up for certain things, whether it's investments or whether it's a deposit on a house or whether you just want to buy yourself something nice at the end of the month. But the most useful thing about budgeting in my eyes is the fact that it declutters and de-stresses your life, because you know where your money is going. You have control of where all your money is going, and that's a really valuable thing, because it means that you know that no matter what you do, your money is being spent on X or Y. There's no, hidden costs to your life. So you have the peace of mind that you're in control of your spending and you know where it's all going. So now you know why you might want a budget. How do you go about doing it? And how do you go about making sure that you stick to a budget? So firstly, I know loads of people who set budgets with the best intentions. They really take time detailing out their budget. They make sure that they're not just using generic things like food, and they're actually splitting it out into different types of groceries that they might buy, and also splitting it out into takeaway meals or going out and buying food, these kind of things that you can break down into more detail. But those things are essentially pointless if you don't actually track your spending throughout the month. So this is something that I always think about, is companies don't just track their spending at the end of the month and look back and go, looks like we were over budget by a few million. Now obviously your budget probably isn't a few million a month unless you're very fortunate, and in which case budgeting might not really be needed, but you should really be careful with your spending throughout the month, because that's where you're going to find out the little things that you can change. So this is called budget journaling. So what you want to do is get yourself a notebook, or just type it out on your phone in your notes every time you spend money, and this will really help you keep track of exactly what you're spending throughout the month. So this sounds like a really arduous and boring task. Like every time I spend money, I have to write it down. This is horrid. But there are a few apps that you can use that can help you out. Now, obviously you've got things like Monzo, which automatically track all of your spendings, and you can categorize them directly on the app. But you can also use apps like Wally or Money Dashboard to take control of this budgeting for you and allow you to automatically categorize things. Now personally, I'd recommend that you should do 1 or 2 months manually doing this, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, notes on your phone, or just writing it down in a notebook, because it creates that automatic link between what you're actually doing and the physical act of spending. It means that in your mind you're reminding yourself, I've spent some money and it should go on my budget. And in that way you should be more accurately keeping track of the things you actually spend, whereas these apps can very quickly take it completely out of your control, and then you can end up in the same position as you were before, where you feel like the app is doing the monitoring for you and you don't need to do anything. But as I said, this does sound very arduous, but fortunately it's only really something you need to do in full detail every kind of 2 to 3 months after the first couple of months, because then you'll start getting a grasp of exactly how much you're spending and where you're spending it, and you can slightly scale back on writing down every single detail of what you spend. You may just need to write an overview on the kind of weekly basis or even on a few days basis to make sure you know roughly where you are with your spending versus the month's budget, and you know whether you're going to go under or over, so you can trim off the fat or save some extra money at the end of the month. Now secondly, it feeds perfectly into that concept I had before of trimming off the fat or putting extra into investments at the end of the month. It's redoing your budget. So this is something that a lot of people forget to do. They set their monthly budget and they go, right, I'm just going to work at it blindly until I meet this budget and then I'll stop. But the real advantage of budgeting is taking your time and meticulously planning how much you're going to spend to ensure you can save more and more month on month until you reach a point where you're satisfied with the quality of life versus the amount of money that you're investing. So personally, I review my budget roughly every 2 months to make sure that if I have the ability to do so, I can trim a little bit extra off my budget in certain areas that I've identified, and I can then use that money to put towards investments or towards saving for a deposit on a house or a flat. So this is something that's crucially important on the big things and the small things. So one of the big things that people do that they then forget to put in their budget is when they renew insurance. So for example, your car insurance, your home insurance, your gadgets insurance, Whenever these get renewed, the price typically reduces year on year, although it can increase if you buy a more expensive car or if you have more expensive gadgets. But every time that changes, your budget should be changing accordingly. You're not going to be able to stick to the same budget if your insurance for your car goes up by, say, £100 a month. So you need to make sure to reflect those changes directly into your budget every time that they happen. And of course, this isn't to say that the target of your budget is to be as stringent as you can and to save more and more and more until you basically are spending the absolute minimum, unless that's what you want to do. But the advantage of budgeting in this way means that as you realise you can save more in areas that you don't justify the spending, you can look at other things that you actually do enjoy and start spending more money in those areas to maximise the enjoyment you get out of it. So thirdly, as I said, making sure that you're spending money in areas that you actually want to be spending money in. And this comes into the idea of, is it a want or is it a need? So are you budgeting in lots of money for things that you need, or are you budgeting in lots of things for things that you want? So one of the biggest things that adds up over time in these little wants is when you're at the shop and you get the end of aisle displays and the things that are at buy level. So in supermarkets, things that are roughly at your eye level have a premium attached to having your item placed on that shelf because it's the buy level. It's where it's in line with where most people will look, and so they're most likely to grab it. Think to yourself how many times you've looked at something on the middle shelf or on that eye level shelf and neglected things that are on the bottom shelf or the top shelf because you see something that's there and you go, yep, that'll do. And the same is true with the end of aisle displays. They often have, reduced, saving, this much off, price fix. And these things are built to entice you into buying something on the end of aisle that wasn't on your shopping list at all. These are the really important things to remember, is in that moment, those are just wants. You see that end of aisle chocolate and you think, I've got to have it, I was craving chocolate. But you weren't really craving chocolate, you just saw that it was slightly reduced price and you thought, well, it's only £1, how hard can it be? But you add 4 or 5 of those per shop, that's £5 per shop, you do a shop every week, and suddenly you're looking at an extra £20 to £30 added onto your monthly budget just from little wants that you pick up on these end of aisles and buy levels in the shop. So make sure that you're reflecting on whether you actually need to buy something or whether you just want something. So one way to make sure that what you're buying is a need and not a want is to put off buying the item for anywhere from 24 hours to a week. If you go through 24 hours and you're not thinking about the item anymore, or you don't have an opportunity where you thought, damn, I wish I'd bought that item, I could really use it right now, chances are you don't really need the item. And the same goes with the week strategy. That's for bigger purchases. So if you're looking at, for example, buying a new camera or buying some new shoes, go through a week, and if you didn't think about the new shoes, or if you didn't think about, damn, I wish I had those new shoes because my old shoes are worn out, the chances are it's probably just a want and not a need, so you don't need to spend money on it. So fourthly, you're not coming under budget because you keep spending money and you're not drinking
the 20-cent iced coffee.
No, I do get the point. It's repeated over and over again. You're not going to become a millionaire by saving money on iced coffees. That's really not going to help you. But it will help you stick to a budget, and it will give you more freedom to spend money elsewhere. But this isn't just iced coffees we're on about. This is meals out and this is drinks at the pub when they're eventually open again. But these are the things that you can really save money on. So one big thing is taking your own meals to work rather than paying for meals when you're out and about in town. It's always going to be more expensive to pay for a meal than it is to make a meal. And if you find it difficult to make meals for cheap prices or to keep the costs down, if your weekly shop of food is looking ever more expensive because the recipes you use are really expensive, then one piece of advice I'd definitely recommend is use student cookbooks. They have actually really, really tasty meals, and because students are always on a budget, trust me, I was a student for 5 years, then you know that the recipes are going to be low price or relatively low price for tasty food. Like the food you can make from student cookbooks is really good, and it is always very cheap to make. And then the other benefit you get from planning and cooking your own meals is that you create an actual targeted shopping list when you go to the shops. If you pick, 5 recipes that you want to cook throughout the week, where each of those makes 2 or 3 meals each for each person, then all you need to do is look at the ingredients list, write that down, and every time you go to a new recipe, write out the ingredients list. And you'll have an exact shop of only the food that you need to make it through the week. This is not only great for your budget because it means you're not overspending, but it's also great for the environment because you're significantly less likely to waste food that you don't eat. So fifth, we've got subscriptions. Now, Brits pay £2 billion per year for subscriptions alone. That's an absolutely outrageous amount of money for subscription services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all these free delivery subscriptions that are now being tacked on to the websites you already used for your clothes. And in fact, the average UK resident spends £60 per year on subscription fees alone. That's not including the items you're spending on whatever website it is that you're subscribed to, whether it's Amazon Prime, where the average UK user spends over £700 a year on items bought off Amazon Prime. That may be quite shocking. £700 a year for the average person who has an Amazon Prime membership. But actually, if you go back through your orders, because you can do that on your phone, just go to the Amazon app and go to your order history and scroll through, you might be shocked by how much you've actually ordered off Amazon over the past year or even in the past month. And this is something that's really good with budgeting, is that it identifies what you're spending your money on and where. So you'll know exactly if you're spending too much on Amazon, because if you catalogue your spends to the actual shop you spend them in, you'll suddenly be like, well, why have I bought £25 worth of things off Amazon in the past week? And why have I just spent £10 more on Amazon this week? So it's one of those useful things is subscription services, the cost isn't just on the subscription you've signed up to, but it's also the fact that because you've paid for that subscription, you'll be mentally tricked into thinking that you have to spend more money to make that subscription worth it. So review whether you really need the subscriptions and review whether you need to keep spending money on that website just because you paid for the subscription in the first place. So that's it for the 6 things that you can do to keep under budget and to make sure you're not going beyond your budget every month. Oh no, wait, that was only 5. Oh yeah, that's because the 6th one is miscounting. See what I did there? I'm funny, right? Yeah, validate me in the comments, please. Thanks. I'm so lonely. So miscounting when it comes to budgeting is the odd 20p there, 50p there, you round to the nearest pound, you ignore what you've actually spent, and you just kind of assume that you're roughly correct. Now this is crucially important when you're spending cash rather than card, because on your card everything's tracked. You can look at your bank statements and get the exact amount that you spent. But with cash, it's very difficult to keep track of, unless you're writing it down when you're spending it, or keeping all of your receipts. I often find that when I go back through my statements, the thing that shocks me is if I've taken cash out at the ATM and then I spend it, I won't have included that in my budget. Because for example, I would have taken £20 out and I'll look on my bank statement, oh, £20 gone, okay, that's fine. But I would have had £5 from some other time that I forgot to put on there. And this is even worse when you're given money as a gift, because you don't include that in things you're spending. If you're given £10, £20, you don't think automatically, well, I should remember to put that and add that on to the amount of money I had to start with, because otherwise you're just going to spend that £20 and you will technically be £20 over budget, or it will enforce a spending habit that will put you £20 over budget in future if you think you've got more money than you actually do. So making sure that you're counting your money correctly and ensuring to note down cash expenditure is one of the most useful things that you can do as well to ensure you stay under budget. So that is actually the final one. That's my 6 things to help you stay under budget. Now, if you have any other budgeting tips, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Consider subscribing if you are new around here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.